So we're continuing with the Rambam, Issurei Biah. This is a Mishneh Torah, the Machbili edition. We are covering the laws of conversion. The laws of conversion could be found in Issurei Biah chapter 13 and 14. We are in chapter 13. I mentioned before, if you're trying to find this or follow along in the Chabad edition, there's going to be some discrepancy. This is the Yemenite version we're using. So today we are covering Zion. We're going to try to make it to Chet and possibly Tet, but right now we're in Zion. And in the Chabad edition, that would be Yud Aleph, which is 11. So we're starting in Halacha 7. It reads, Keshem shemolin umitbalim et hagerim. Just as we circumcise and immerse converts, kach molim umitbalim et havadim. In the same way we circumcise and immerse slaves, hanil kachim min hagoyim l'shem avdut, that we've acquired from the nations for the purpose of servitude, which is quite important to emphasize. We're not allowed to steal slaves from other countries unless we acquire them by purchasing them or via conquest. Kidnapping, for sure, what occurred during the transatlantic slave trade is not justified according to Torah law. And it continues, halokech eved min hagoy, if we acquire a slave from a Gentile, vekadamcha eved vetaval l'shem ben chorin, and then the slave himself, he takes the initiative and he immerses himself for the sake of becoming free, kana atzmo, he goes free, he becomes a free man. Do you understand what this is saying? If you went and you purchased a slave, and when you purchased him, he's under your control, he's under your vicinity, he goes and he immerses himself for the sake of his freedom, he becomes free right there. Now granted, I wish the Torah was a lot clearer on the laws of slavery, but the oral law for sure paints it in a very, very sophisticated manner. And this is when, here it says, V'chusha yomar be'et tevilah, that if he says at the time of his immersion, Hareini tovel bifnechem l'shem gerut, if he says before the people there that I'm doing this for the sake of conversion, this is when he acquires his freedom. Ve'im taval bifnei ribu, but if he immerses in front of his master, einu sarich lefarash, there's no need to say any of this. Eila kevan shetabal nishtacharar, and once he's already immersed himself, then he's considered fully free. And friends, I think this is a lesson that you guys really should not forget when giving over Judaism's understanding of being a slave or a servant. I mean, truth be told, the word eved means both slave and servant, because this teaches us in Judaism, we force no one to remain a slave. And this also teaches us what is required during an actual conversion. Where's the intention? I mean, you're telling me this slave studied for a year in order to convert? This is why the rabbis teach this principle elsewhere, that you don't need permission to do something beneficial for somebody else. No questions asked. You want to be Jewish? Come on in. Why? Because ultimately being Jewish meant nothing. It was a legal status. You can't force your way into God or force God to act in your behalf. No, it puts you on the path. But what matters is what you do with your Jewishness. This is what people do not understand nowadays. They think that the actual act of conversion is some sort of spiritual process, that it's the act of conversion that brings you into the covenant. No, the actual entering of the covenant comes later, once you actually accept the commandments. In this case, in most cases, people accept the commandments even before they convert, even before they approach a rabbi. Especially nowadays when people know the Bible and are made to wait years to sometimes even speak to the rabbi. Okay, we're moving on to Halacha Chet. Lefichach sarich ribu letakfu b'mayim. Therefore, his master must submerge him in the water. And it's interesting here, I think what it's doing, it's suddenly hopped to how we convert a slave to the partial status they happen to have before they free themselves and become full Jews. We mentioned before that this is the status similar to a woman, religiously or halachically, meaning they're not bound by commandments that are time-based, and they're not bound to any positive commandments. And it seems like, I mean, honestly, probably this halacha should have appeared before, but it seems that this is a halacha on how to immerse the slave for him to become a slave. But anyways, like we read, Lefichach sarich ribu letakfu b'mayim, that the master must submerge him in the water, meaning this is what you do with the Gentile before he's actually, or the process of him actually becoming a slave. Ad sheyale v'chut tachat shibudo. And as we're bringing him up, and the master's in some way raising him up from the water, under his strength or his dominion, umoadiu bifnei hadayanim, we inform him in front of the judges, which technically here is just witnesses. We covered before how any time you have three Jews together, yes, it's called a Beit Din, and a Beit Din is populated by Dayanim, by judges, but according to Jewish law, in certain cases like this, I think circumcision is another one, what you have is witnesses, not actual judges, lest someone think that it's a special classification, that one needs to be a rabbi or specially ordained in order to witness a conversion, which is not the case. It's reiterated the Rambam later on. He talks about Gimel Hediotot, saying that these witnesses, the Yanam as it states here, are just regular laymen. But anyway, it says that we inform him in front of the judges, Sheleshem Avdut Matbilu, that we immerse them for the sake of servitude, to be a slave. And then he continues, Vein Havet Tovel Ela Bipnei Shlosha Uveyom Keger. It teaches us that a slave only immerses in the presence of these three witnesses or judges during the day, similar to how you convert someone who fully converts to Judaism. Basically telling you that there is no real big difference. And then it says, Shemiksat Geruti. Like we said, that it is considered some sort of like partial conversion, or it's similar to the original conversion to Judaism in some partial fashion.